I have a few minutes before the museum closes, so I'll check out this exhibit. It's a walkthrough, I think. I think that's the end of it. Looks very similar to the one they had in the... Is it the National Museum? I think it was. Yeah, at the National Museum on Tiananmen Square. So the big thing you have to get over is everything is framed in China according to everyone else being the aggressor, which is a fairly accurate perspective up until about the Cold War, when China emerges as a modern nation. And then the United States is guilty of a lot of political intrigue and domino theory, satellite war stuff during the Cold War. But we talk about it. We don't try to portray it as everyone else was aggressive. You know, we have political conversations about detente and nuclear proliferation, etc. You come across these exhibits and they tend to portray it one-sided, but it may just be the translation. And certainly you look at the history of China before it emerged as a modern nation, and it was torn apart by outside invading influences. First from Asia, of course, Mongols and Manchu, then the Japanese, and I guess between us, there were Japanese pirates, but between Japan invading in 1930, you have the British in 1830s, Opium Wars, so 100 years in between there. September 18th incident. To paraphrase a lot of this stuff, that's exactly what happened. China. There's a famous political poster that they'll probably show somewhere here. That'll show China being carved up by a British bulldog, an American eagle, a Russian bear, a French frog. They all want their little slice. And they just treat China like a pizza. Everybody grabs a slice. And so, when you look at their current mindset, you have to take that into account. It's not like they just decided, to adopt a communist agenda for the fun of it. Most of these people were poor peasants being horribly oppressed for centuries. Upstairs, we were talking about the imperial examination system, under which it became, very difficult for anyone to advance up the cursus honorum who was already an upper middle class aristocrat familiar with the teachings of Confucius, the literary works of Confucius, who was already literate themselves. Tung oil, tungsten ore. The Chinese were important in fighting the Japanese in Asia, for sure, during World War II. And it's important to remember that they're allies to us in the World War. And all the threats and things they talk about now coming from China, it's like, I still think the hardworking people of China are not a threat. It's, very small groups of people, largely to do with copyright infringement and currently more and more cyber warfare. That's what I see in the news all the time. But those are very small groups of people in, military, industrial, political elite. That's the problem with most forms of government that come with a top-down approach of the United States was very lucky, I think, to get a democratic republic from a group of men who could have just decided to institute landed gentry or something. The founding fathers in the states, you know. Close? Okay. Thank you. And they're closing up here. There's the Great Hall of the People. There's that San Francisco. United Nations Charter. Fruits of Victory. Anti-Fascist War. Sometimes you just see it as the anti-fascist war, which usually means World War One. There are some issues, I think, too, that we don't deal with. Violation of free trade and currency manipulation. That, you know, Bill Clinton, the theory was, everybody will join the World Trade Organization and it's good because everyone plays by the same rules. But everybody doesn't play by the same rules. People join and then say, just do what I want anyway. And then, you know, sue each other in world court if there's a violation of someone else doing something not according to the rules. And everybody manipulates and does what they can to undermine and bend the rules or outright break them and then deny they're breaking them. So that becomes a big issue too, you know. How do you deal with that without basically having a war because you all join this organization that's set out to avoid that by agreeing to a set of trade. You know, it's the whole start of the Opium Wars. So you say, okay, we'll all join this group and agree to have free and balanced trade, and then that goes out the window and it's like, okay, well, we'll just kind of muddle through for a while. It actually can work for generations as long as you have normalized diplomatic and cultural relations. Could go on for decades. Serpentine jade, buried wood shaped stump. Little fake bamboo grove down here too. Here's the museum bookstore and gift shops. I'm gonna take the escalator back up. So that's good. I saw everything in their main building, and then they have a east building, I think, that I didn't get to, with some more exhibits. It's a nice museum, but the problem with a lot of the buildings in China, this is the problem with the top-down approach to everything. We're going to build the Capitol Museum. Okay, great. They put the building in, and the building goes in, and then the exhibits come in afterwards, and the exhibits don't, you know, quite fit the building. They're not designed around each other. It was some bureaucrat deciding to build this, not some museum curator who's soliciting donations to build his dream museum, you know. And so it takes, you know, a generation for all this stuff to shake out. Not to mention, I think a lot of the best art in Chinese hands is in private collections and will remain so for another generation or two. And then the rich Chinese who bought it up donate it to the state when they die. So you'll get a funding collection and an endowment for the museum to play around with. So you get these beautiful buildings. This is kind of a box within a box, this building. But you go through some of the halls and you're like, who laid this hall out? This museum was just built, and it's a nightmare kind of to walk through some of the exhibits. So that's kind of the problem with the top-down approach, I think, of socialism or any autocratic government system where you don't have these things happening by private volition. So somebody taking a personal interest because it's their love and passion, and going around to their fellow countrymen who happen to have deep pockets. You know, you can crawl all you want about the fact that you know, rich people don't pay taxes in the United States, but we wouldn't have most of the great institutions we do in the United States if it weren't for private endowments and that kind of stuff. And you're getting a whole debate about what would happen if we didn't spend our money on the defense budget. We'd have enough money to do all those things and more without the private gifts. So we have our own problems in the United States, but I'm not there now, so I am gonna walk back towards the Mushidi subway station because I found a store that was actually selling Doritos. I'm going to buy some, even though they're a bit expensive. They look like knockoff Doritos. I don't know if they were real. They had Frito-Lay and everything on them, but it looked like somebody had just copied it and put it on their own bag. I wasn't quite sure. They tasted similar, but not exactly the same as Doritos, you know? Whereas most of the junk food you get overseas tastes exactly the same. The exception is like a lot of it's made with coconut milk instead of real milk, cow milk. And, you know, you'll taste that in like the Oreos and the Kit Kats. You taste the coconut. I don't know if it's coconut milk or coconut oil that they're putting in it, but it'll taste slightly different. And I don't like the taste of coconuts. I hate it. I hate that. I don't think we're too far from the financial district either, or what used to be the financial district maybe before the central business district took off. I have to ask a friend about that, where the financial district is now, or look it up online later. If the internet's working at my hostel, which it may or may not be. See, it's a beautiful building, you know. You see that a lot, like the Science and Tech Museum there in Shanghai. It's like this big, beautiful building, and then you're like, the exhibits are kind of weird. They've gotten better from what I read than when it first opened. So this is a tablet from the reign of Emperor Qianlong, the Dandy Emperor. That's what I call him. Then I read recently about all the personal military expeditions he also went on. And I thought, oh, maybe he wasn't just a dandy who was into the arts, you know? Because that's what you hear about him in museums all the time. Commissioned a lot of art and went on a lot of trips with his mom.